Hello and welcome. So good to see all of you here today. Thank you for joining us for another Alight Workshare. This series is an opportunity for Alight community members to virtually gather and connect from all around the world. Go ahead and type where you are joining us from if you haven't already. I counted 14 different countries being represented on this call earlier today. So excited to hear from all of you on the chat. We've got Alight staff, volunteers, board members, and supporters here. This is a space where all are welcome as we listen and learn from incredible Alight humanitarians that are going to share the work they're doing. So I just want to take a quick moment to appreciate all of the Alight global staff who are here today across 8 different time zones. We are so grateful for the work that you are also doing every day, but also for creating the space to support your teammates who are going to be sharing on this call. No matter what day of the week it is, what time of day, you are showing up for Alight in this really beautiful way. So thank you. Welcome to our new friends who are on this call. My name is Nadia and I work at Alight out of our Minnesota office. My role is to be a bridge to connect you with the work that Alight is doing in a way that feels really meaningful for you, but also human-centered for the customers that we work alongside. And for those of you that are new, I just want to say that Alight is a humanitarian organization. We work alongside displaced communities as well as communities faced with extreme fragility. So that has taken us to places like Pakistan and El Salvador. Our core services include water, healthcare, protection, shelter, and more. But these are basic needs and they act as a launch pad into what we are really striving for, which is to help people build lives that are full of dignity, purpose, joy, and connection. And actually, as I was reflecting about the Nakivale Community Library Network that we're going to be talking about today, I was realizing that this space embodies all of those things: dignity, purpose, joy, and connection for our community in Nakivale. And so I just want to express my gratitude for everybody who has made this project possible. A couple of housekeeping things I want to mention. If you want to stay on mute once we get going, any questions, anything you want to throw into the chat to share with this group, please feel free to. This is a casual space. And again, bring your coffee, your tea, your snack, whatever you want to do, just bring it to be comfortable on this call. And another thing is we are recording today. So if there is anybody who could not join us today, we will have this recording to share out. And we are streaming live right now on Facebook for anybody that does not have Zoom as a way to access the call. So before I go any further, I want to have all of you jump off mute and greet everybody who is on this call. So go ahead, jump off mute, greet each other however you would like.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Bonjour.
Hi.
Hi.
Happy Thursday.
Hi, Skip.
Hi, Frank.
Hi, Angela.
Hello. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Angela.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Randy.
Hey, मुझे बड़े.
Good luck, Jim.
Awesome. Go. Thank you. It was so nice to hear everybody's voices coming together. All right. Go ahead and you can get back on mute. All right, so now I'm excited to introduce today's Workshare to all of you. So we have the opportunity today to hear from the Alight Uganda program. And so just to share a little bit about what we're doing in Uganda, Alight is an implementing partner in 6 settlements across the country. We have incredible staff, incentive workers, and community activists who are working alongside some of the largest populations of people who are experiencing displacement in the world. The Uganda team provides a huge variety of critical services. I'll name a few of them: protection, water, hygiene, sanitation, and community empowerment. Today's Workshare is about the Nakivale Community Library Network, which you all know. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about the landscape of where this library is located. So Nakivale Refugee Settlement is in southwestern Uganda, It is home to over 100,000 residents displaced from 13 neighboring Central and East African nations. Nakivale is also one of the oldest refugee settlements in the world. It was founded in the 1950s. Many of you have heard of Nakivale through Alight's work in the past. Some of you have visited and you've traveled and you've participated in the World Refugee Day 5K that takes place there. It is unique in its size, in its diversity, and the continual movement of people often interacting with the neighboring national host communities. Over the years, Nakivale has become a true innovation hub and the birthplace of many of Alight's global programs, such as Changemakers 365. And through collaborative co-creation with community members who live there, Alight's Nakivale team members have been able to develop solutions not only for the community, but develop them with and alongside the community. And it's that inspiring history of unleashed abundance in Nakivale that has paved the way for Alight and partners like Atomic Data to get closer to the community and design the first of its kind Nakivale Community Library Network. So today you're going to hear from the leading force duo who have been working side by side with Nakivale residents to make the dream of a community library a reality. No matter your age, your literacy level, or nationality, the library is an inclusive space where all are welcome to build community through play, sometimes rest, greater access to educational materials, and an emphasis on sharing ideas to grow together. So now let me tell you about our speakers. It is my pleasure to introduce Ambrose Kanyanyeru. So Ambrose is an Alight staff member. He has been in the humanitarian space in Uganda for 15 years, and he is based in the city of Kampala, but he is traveling constantly as he is managing all of the operations and programming that is happening in Uganda. Now I'm going to introduce you to Jim Wolford, who is based in the other side of the world in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So Jim is the founder and CEO of Atomic Data. And Atomic is not only Alight's international IT provider, but over the many, many years, Jim and Atomic have closely partnered with Alight on a number of community-based projects in East Africa. All right, and so now for our journalist host who is going to navigate this amazing conversation, welcome Joe McCarthy. So Joe is a staff writer for Global Citizen. He's based in Brooklyn, New York, and mostly writes about sustainability and global events. He started to talk more about what's happening in the humanitarian sector, which is how we were able to meet Joe, because he has covered some of the work that we've done in Nakivale, but also some of the education work we've done in Pakistan. So really excited to have Joe here to join us today. And Joe, if you are ready, I'm going to hand two things over to you. So I'm going to hand a microphone over to you so you can get started. I am also handing you a fishing rod, which you know what to do with if Jim needs some reeling in. Yes, Jim, I hope you heard that. All right, are we ready?
Yeah, thank you so much. That was such a great introduction. I appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope you enjoy this conversation that we're about to have. To start off, I'm going to ask a few background questions to Jim and Ambrose. So I'll just dive right into those. So Jim, you've been working with Alight since 2007. Can you tell us what that partnership has looked like over the years?
Thanks, Joe. It's great to be here. I'm always touched by all of the folks around the world that are joining us from Alight and from all the backers that I've known through the years, and supporters, volunteers, and a lot of our Atomic people and my friends. It was kind of a typical, believe it or not, meeting between Colleen, who used to be the HR director, and me at Atomic Data out selling some IT services. So we met in 2007 at the old space. I think it was at the Women's Center building over off of Loring Park, for those in Minneapolis who know where that is and where the old office used to be. And Colleen and I met and we hit it off, and we decided that we would be their IT vendor. And then things sort of got rolling. It seemed fairly simple at the time until I really got into it. And then I realized how deep in the mud I was. There was a very funny meeting probably a year or two into the relationship, where I had proposed a lot of things for the field. And then I think he's a Brit. He's no longer with the organization. His name was Graham. And Graham used to be really kind of a wise ass. And he kind of would cut me off during meetings and tell me that I didn't know what I was talking about. And then until I go to the field, I shouldn't make any proposals. And so I, of course, got irritated with Graham one day and said, fine, drop me in the worst place you can send me to so that I can understand what's going on for Alight, or actually ARC at the time. And so little did I know, Colleen and Graham set me up to go to Uganda and Southern Sudan. And that began kind of my journey of Graham was completely right. I didn't know my head from my derriere. And the minute I got over there and saw that IT networks were running on car batteries, and people had like 2 hours in the afternoon to turn a server on. They didn't have any internet connectivity. Paper was being strapped to the back of mopeds and shipped back to Kampala to get, to request water or materials that people needed. I started understanding a little bit of what we were dealing with, and it really woke me up. And from there, it just spiraled out of control because I fell madly in love with Uganda. Diaz is on the call, was there. Lots of people in the Changwali camp settlement I met, and I came back and I couldn't get them out of my head and my heart. And so we just started doing projects, and I started working with Daniel, and I started working on what More Atomic could do and how to be their IT provider. We also needed to get Atomic as involved so they could understand when a call came in from someone in Kampala in the middle of the night here, but middle of the day there, that we would understand where they were coming from and who they were. And so from there, it just kept evolving.
And somewhere along the line, you met Ambrose, and you two have grown quite close since then. Both of you, can you tell us something about one another that we might be surprised to learn?
Well, a couple things about Ambrose that probably the Alight people know, but Ambrose is the father of 4 strapping young men, Gary, Harry, Gabriel, and Hayden. And Gary and Harry are twins. He also has a farm on the side, and he raises very tasty rabbits, probably the tastiest rabbit I've ever had in Uganda. And lastly, he is just one of those people that inspire me because, Ambrose could do probably any profession that he would want in Uganda. He's very educated, highly intelligent young man, and he chooses to serve others and gives of his time and leaves his family and his wife to go off and be there for others. And it's people like Ambrose that make me feel like I'm barely doing anything. And so he keeps me showing up.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And Jim, thank you so much. And I think probably some of you might not know that Jim kind of has a property that is not collected from Ethiopia, and that is the horns of the sheep. So once he gets back, probably he will pick that. But on top of that, Jim is genuinely a good guy, person who would want to mingle, person who would want to put himself down to earth and understand the feelings. And I think that lesson he learned because of different things he's doing. I've known Jim for maybe close to 2 years now, but I've never regretted having met Jim because he's very supportive, and he's a kind of person who would do, when you are working with him, you'd confidently rely on him because he will trust you. He will give you all the confidence that you need to make all the necessary decisions. And this is not common sometimes to a number of supporters. Probably would want to see every month or every week spending accountabilities and something like that. But I've worked with Jim, and I've seen his level of trust and confidence in the work we do, very genuine, and he's a good guy to hang with. And I love you, Jim. Thank you so much for being part of me.
Thanks, bud.
And Ambrose, we all know that you're a very busy guy. So when you get a moment to yourself, how do you spend your free time these days? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I spend a lot of my time doing all this. I will just share my screen so that folks can see what I do when I'm for my free time. What you see in the corner is a bunch of chickens, close to 1,000 chickens. And I and my wife and my boys, which Jim mentioned, spend a lot of our time at the farm doing all these things. I love also playing around with dogs. I have very big dogs, of course. As a farmer, I also need security. So basically, I keep dogs and they give us security. And at the same time, I grow matoke. Some of you who could have come to Uganda, Uganda is predominantly a matoke growing country. And this is the matoke. And part of the bunnies and rabbits Jim talked about are there. And I also keep goats. I keep apiary, I keep cattle. So it makes me happy when I'm not doing this for Alight. And when I'm at Alight, sometimes I go and prepare what they call hot meal. And the hot meal means for refugees who are checked into the settlement, given the first meal because they have traveled long distances and they're not able probably to prepare a meal of their own. So here in the corner, it's me preparing a meal for the people who are staying at the settlement, at the reception center. It's a big area. Maybe probably sometimes it can host or accommodate about 1,000 individuals. So I go there and I like mingling with people who do those kind of things. And other than that, definitely, I make sure that I do programming for Alight, and lots of some of these things you see here are the initiatives and developments we worked together to make Alight and make contributions. Thank you so much, Joe. Over.
Wow, that's amazing, Ambrose. It's really cool that you're doing all that. I have 2 dogs too in Brooklyn. They're guard dogs, but they're Chihuahuas, so they're not as effective. If anyone came, they wouldn't be able to protect us that well. But I was told that there are some congratulations in order, Ambrose. You have a new challenge that you're taking on soon. And you also think that the library is in good hands now. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much again. I joined Alight in 2018, June. And before that, I was working with another humanitarian and government organization. I had been there for the last 13 years. So when I joined Alight, I joined in Nakivale, which we are going to be talking about today. And I was coordinating programs for Alight there. And I progressed into different responsibilities, including currently what I'm doing, which is program coordination for the entire Alight Uganda program. However, by nature and training, and I think I like exploring. And right now, Alight has considered me and have accepted to go to Sudan to provide a contribution to the refugees who are coming from Ethiopia. So I'll be based in the Kasara in East Sudan, leading that operation for Alight Sudan program. And I'm very excited to be joining the wonderful team in Sudan. However, Jim and I have worked on a strategy of making sure that the library is completely running with or without us. However, we always say, me and Jim, we are the constant about the Nakivale. In other words, we'll keep our mind, our hearts thinking about that kind of community. But we have a structure and we believe the library is in a better shape for it to run moving forward. Thank you.
Well, I wish you nothing but the best of luck in your next chapter. I'm sure you're going to do incredible work. But before we start talking about the library, we want to make sure everyone on the call can see it for themselves. And we put together a little video featuring the library. So you can go ahead and play the video now, please.
good afternoon. My name is Liban Abdullah Yusuf. I'm Somali by nationality. I stay based Camp Today. I'm 35 years old. I have been using this library for 1 year. I wanted the rest of the world to know that me, I have no background of education, but I have passion for reading books. That's why I'm using this library. This library is very good. It's very special to the community. It's well stocked with the books, rich in information. Thanks.
Yeah, hello, my name is Junior Manya Mkumbaliz. I live in Nakivale refugee settlement. I'm 20 years old and I've been using the library for a period of 1 year and above. I take the world as a place where everyone has something to bring in order to change it and make the world better. Nakivale Library is a family to us because everyone is given the chance to study, to read and think and write. So no matter we are not rich, but we are considered as also great people. So I believe in the change that our library is bringing to us and what it's doing for us, the refugees. Thank you.
It's a great video. But before we go into the library and some of what we just saw, Jim, you've been on a bit of a journey over the last decade, beginning with your first trip to Uganda in 2014. Can you tell us about that and how it sort of culminated into the idea of the library and Nakivale refugee settlement? What made a mark on you and what was your vision back then? What challenges did you run into trying to make it real? Oh, I think you're on mute, Jim.
I know. How many times has that happened to all of us? That's good because I didn't want you to hear that anyway. Thanks for the question, Joe. Well, to start, I have 2 boys of my own with my lovely wife, Amy, Atticus and Phineas. And Atticus was born, believe it or not, at about 1.5 pounds. And he was born in the 25th, 26th week. He was hyperpreemie, and it forced Amy and I to really start understanding child development way more than we would have, especially me as a guy. Women are much more in tune with these things, but I was a dope, and my wife educated me, and so did the school district. And due to the development of Atticus's eyes and everything else that he had going on, challenges, we were told very early on, before it was hip to talk about too much screen time and everything else, that he shouldn't be in front of a screen. He shouldn't be around technology a lot until he really developed. So it forced us early on to start understanding the love of books, reading, and not really having technology in our kids' lives. And so both my boys today, you wouldn't be able to, even understand how many books they have in their rooms. At 13 and 15, they don't play online video games except for a very, very short period of time each day. They read constantly. I have one that you cannot stop him from reading. And at 13 and 15 in America, that's a little unique. No cell phones. And so when I was in Uganda and I saw that you go to a settlement, and when you hear the word refugee, you think that these people are here for a short period of time, that they will return home. And what you find out is that these camps have been around for decades, and that many of these people will never go back home, that there are either tribal wars or there is great fear of violence. And so they're going to live in these refugee camps or the settlements, and they become their community. And I didn't think that or know that till I was there. And once that happened, and I thought about my children, I wanted these children to have the same opportunities, and I wanted them to read. When you read, you get to leave the world you're in. When you read, you imagine great things. You put yourself into the hero or the villain's characters you're reading. You leave where you are. And to me, I wanted to give that to these kids because they just touched me so much every time I'm there. They're so happy, and there's so much joy in these communities that you can just do the most basic things to add to that joy and to add to the dreaming and the imagination and the development. And if we don't do those things, they really they suffer quite greatly. And so when I left the first time, I came back and we did some transportation projects, some housing projects, and I think we did a fertility study as our first projects after my first trip. But after I returned again, I started thinking that I wanted the books and the idea of just a space where they could leave their troubles behind and go to a different place to be in their life. And believe it or not, at the time, Alight may disagree with me, but most people at Alight weren't interested in my book idea. So I actually veered off a little and started doing it kind of on my own. And I'm sure you're going to ask me some questions about that coming up, but it just started out in that idea that I wanted those kids to have the same thing my kids had. And that's where the idea first came from.
I think it's so important that you mentioned that refugees often find themselves displaced for years and sometimes decades. We just reached the 10th anniversary of the Syrian civil war, and people in Syria have been displaced for many years. And humanitarian aid is usually structured around short-term giving and providing a baseline of support. But building a library is going beyond that and providing a more substantial way to provide support to people. So Ambrose, you came on the scene when the library was already underway, and you and Jim worked together to right the ship. What's the first thing you two did together?
Yeah, I think when, as I said, I started my career at Alight in Nakivale, and that's where the library is based. And part of the responsibilities of the program manager there, or the area coordinator there, was to make sure that you oversee all the programming that takes place in the area, of course, for Alight. And part of it was the Nakivale Community Library, which had been started with the progress and a number of different ideas coming up with this big structure to be placed in the settlement and provide an opportunity for learning, for access to books. And the first thing we did, I was on a meeting with Jim, of course, with my other colleagues, Angela and other Igor, who are also colleagues at Alight, based in Minneapolis and I think Europe. So what we were looking at was this big idea of an architectural design to be able to have a magnificent structure. But somehow along the way, we probably were not having all it takes to understand how that would be. So what we did first was to understand what we needed to have as a structure, whether we had everything as expertise. And we found, unfortunately, that we had moved a step, and we had made some significant mistakes in terms of the structure. What we did together was, one, getting back to the drawing board. And again, it goes back to Jim for his understanding. We had made some significant losses about, we needed additional resources of close to maybe 20,000 USD for us to be able to get back to shape. And we were very honest with him. I was very honest with him. And I told him, Jim, yes, if we want us to move to this direction with this idea, we need to get back to the drawing board. And we brought in all the kind of expertise we needed. He was kind enough to accommodate that deficit or that challenge we had, and we're able to get back to ship. So thanks to Jim for his understanding, for allowing us to make mistakes and being able to still continue trusting us for doing the work on his behalf and on behalf of the community.
So Jim, it sounds like the first few years there was a learning curve. So how have those early experiences, both before and after you and Ambrose started working together, influenced how you want to work and what you want the library to be? I understand you have 3 pillars of success.
Yeah, I mean, Ambrose is kind of being nice to me right now. So a lot of people weren't interested. Libraries seemed like I think a very novel idea to most people. Even at Alight, they had other things to do. They were working on a lot of different topics. And I kind of got engaged with another guy who will remain nameless. And, the one thing that we did correctly was we looked at this and said, if you actually wander around when you go to some camps and you go to Africa, you'll see a lot of structures that are dilapidated, and the Dutch have been there, the Swedes have been there, a lot of different countries have been there and had programs, and then they kind of died off. And so what we did is, the one thing we did well is we hired someone to actually go and study what we should do. Because one of the first things I did, and I'll share a picture later that I'll throw up, is I actually did the stupid white guy trick, which is I go to Africa, I feel bad for a bunch of people that don't have what I have, and I come home and I sent a library. We actually sent a library to Uganda. And the second trip when I got there, all the libraries were still in the same boxes that had been shipped in, because we didn't really think it, I didn't think it through. It had nothing to do with Alight. Two, it was in the wrong languages. Three, I just had not really understood that maybe we had to take a good hard look at the people there and find out what they need. So we hired someone to actually go and be there and do a study to find out, how would you actually make this successful? And it came back with actually 3 things that are now my core, which was, and it sounds hip now, but it's because everybody's doing it, right? Number one, the number one thing that we found out was, if you wanted this to last and be meaningful, it needed to be local. So I have 4 L's that I actually base these principles off of. So listen locally is the first pillar. We have to listen to the community. What they want is what we need to do. And so that is one of our core things. And we listen to them. We don't think from the guy over at the in the United States what Uganda should be doing, because I probably don't know. Secondly, and it makes sense, the second L is lasting. It needs to be sustainable, which is the hot word these days we all talk about. But that means the funding, the way you set it up, having employees there. It needs to be a lasting, long-term plan, not, okay, we'll fund this and then next year we'll go look for funding again. It has to be long-lasting. So we got to listen locally. It has to be long-lasting. And then the third, which is easy but is very difficult, and I'll tell you why it's difficult. It's you have to have love about books. I've been asked to put a cyber cafe in the library. I've been asked to put computers. I've been asked to put Kindles. We've been asked to do all these things. And to me, it doesn't get back to our core. Our core of love of the book is love of that transformative power of the story and storytelling, and what happens when a little boy or girl takes a book and goes off and sits under a tree, which I see there all the time, and reads and is transformed from where they are. We've lost some of that here because we stare at screens all day long. And screens dumb your brain down. It dumbs down thinking. It dumbs down a lot of things. And so the third pillar is really, we've got to stick to this core of, we've got to do this loving thing. And to me, the love of books is the core of it, because it transforms, teaches, to see that Somali man who has had no education sit there and be thrilled and say that he's passionate about being in that library, that he can go pull a book off a shelf and sit down by himself and be equal with all others, to me is one of those things that the old library idea had in mind. We don't have it here in the US that much anymore because we get it all on this screen, and I think it really whittles down that. So listen locally, lasting, meaning sustainable financing, sustainable, planning. And then third, you got to have a love of what that thing is. And for us, it's storytelling, and it's the book.
Yeah, those are some really important principles to have in any humanitarian space, in any space in general. I have a love of books. I'm moving soon, and I have so many books that I have to get rid of some. I just can't fit them all in my new apartment. But Ambrose, Jim was talking about how important it is to base all of this in community. Can you give us on the idea idea of what that actually looks like, on the ground idea of what that looks like. And what does co-designing with community look like specifically for this library?
Yeah, thanks. And building on what Jim has just explained to us, I think there is, if you are to do something for the community or for anybody, then you have to do with them. So basically, nothing for us without us. And that's the principle that the community is built on. And when we understood that, then we realized that we needed to go back and make sure that this community appreciates and understands why this library is there. We did lots of conversations, lots of listening to the community to understand how do they want to shape the library. So because the library being a structure, it needed to be complemented by the appropriate programming, which programming would require that these communities are respected and are listened to be equal partners or stakeholders in the journey of the vision we were building. And that's very core. So nothing like, if you do not listen, if you do not engage, if you do not appreciate why a project or any program is coming up, then you ought not even to try, because at the end of the day, you'll not be able to realize the impact, because the impact is embedded in the target audience or the customer you are working on. And that's what we did to make sure that we listen, and we continuously listen. At Alight, we have a philosophy of doing the doable and listening to our communities. So we've done a lot of work with that and engaging the community, listening to them through ideation sessions with children, with youth, with adults, the parents of these particular kind of target audience we are looking at. And that is why I say it is nothing for us without us. And that's the principle, core principle of any community-based programming.
And thousands of people are using this library. So what have you heard from kids and adults about how they use the library? What has it meant for them?
Yeah, I think that the library, again, has provided an opportunity for children and adult users to be able to have an opportunity of where they can share their experiences, because part of the users are either the authors, and we have this kind of phobia or fear of, if to be an author, you have to be probably a professor, or you have to have gone to school and you have to write this particular book. For our programming, it allows a lot of publication that we co-work with a group of the community, going and listening to them to write their own stories. And that helps even more for them to be able to come and read what is their own. Some of them have their stories of their countries of origin, and they have been part and parcel of the library when we understood the importance of making sure that it's not just enough to have a library has to be shared, co-owned, co-designed, and over time, it has to be consistently being followed like that. And we have close to 35,000 users, almost half of them are children, and we've had testimonies, especially during this COVID time, because we were following the government SOPs, allowing them space to be able to come and read, come and publish, come and be able to do something for their community. And that's an awesome idea. And it was not being provided because it has a big space. The library has a big space for it to be able to accommodate all those SOPs. For those are standard operating procedures for the government that has been put in place to make sure that we prevent COVID. But at the same time, people cannot remain in confinement. There have to be mechanism of being able to live with this pandemic. And it was testimonies are giving us, we are getting from the community, is that it has been helpful and it has enabled them to weed out some of the stress. And some of the referrals from this library, we will get referrals from different other sectors, including mental health, including GBV, for us to be able to accommodate them at the library. So it's an integrated approach of looking at community needs and challenges and opportunities at the same time.
Yeah, that's amazing. And Jim, listening to Ambrose just now, how has your idea of the library evolved over time? But before we get to that, if anyone in the audience has any questions, you can please just add them to the chat and we'll get to them towards the end of the conversation. Thank you.
I think that what's changed is that continual listening, because so a couple things. One, if you were looking at Ambrose's picture, we have the large structure, which is an unbelievable structure. It's huge. It's very open. This big space behind me is the core space. There are usually birds chirping up in the roof when you're down reading, and it's actually an unbelievably warm space. Then there's a children's library we built because the children were making a lot of noise and the adults would get very grumpy with them because they were reading. So we built a little children's library right next door. So there's a little children's library. And then just beyond that is a building that kind of popped up, and the artists, there's an artist quarter over there, and there's probably 20 artists that come every day and build framing, and they wrap canvas if they have the material, and they make unbelievable pieces of art. So one of the things that cropped up was we realized this became the center point of the community. And so all kinds of things started cropping up. So we all of a sudden art came up. The last time I was there, I met with a book club of writers that Ambrose was talking about, which we're going to have a project later this year that they don't know about, but I'll mention it here, where we're going to have a writing contest. We want to award some money because these artists, these writers don't, you can imagine, Joe, how hard it is here. They don't have a lot of way of getting income. So we're gonna probably end up with a writer position there over the next year and a half. But I walked in and there were 25 writers who were meeting and arguing and talking about poetry and writing and everything that should be in the library. And you could just tell that it was theirs. It wasn't mine. And I'm glad it's not mine. I'm the steward that's going to keep funding it, but it's their library. They were like, who's this guy in the corner? And I loved it because they were arguing and fighting, and that is just developing. All kinds of projects are developing. Childcare is developing out of it. It's just amazing what's happening. So it really is becoming, why we call it the Community Library Network, is because it's just changing so many things. It's based around the books, but so many people are using it for different things. They're having different community meetings there. Atomic once a year takes a month and does one of the Alight 365 projects. So every day of that month, we do a different project for the community that the community comes up with. So we take 30 projects, and it has everything to do with, I think I already saw somebody texting over here on the side. We bought 50 Harry Potter books so that they could have book clubs. They couldn't have book clubs because they had to share the book. And we did it in French, by the way, so people know. So it just keeps growing. And as long as we keep fueling their imagination with the funds to do things, and Alight keeps coming up with all this human-centered design where they ask them to develop what they want, it just keeps evolving into this other thing and this other thing and this next thing. And, we're here to just let it be a platform and let it keep taking off, let it keep going. There are so many ideas that we need 30 of them. We usually end up with 300, and we have to actually pick the 30 out of like 300 plus ideas every year. So it just keeps evolving, and we're going to keep evolving it. And I think when we end up, we do want to grow it. We do want to end up at other settlements, and those settlements may be totally different because those people wanted something different. And I think as long as we give them the platform and listen and follow our principles, I think the only thing that will keep this alive 20, 30 years from now, unfortunately, I think the camp will be there and the settlement will be there and the need will be there, is if we let them keep developing it. Because the minute it gets stagnant, it'll probably die, and it'll be one of those dilapidated buildings that someone else will come along and look at and go, I wonder why that didn't work out. And we don't want that. So again, if we stick to our core principles of making it be theirs, listening, and really being there to provide without dictating the funds, and then just keep letting it be about the love of learning and storytelling, I think that they will take it and run with it. So I think the vision is theirs. It shouldn't be mine. I get this short period of time to be a steward to help them do something, which is one of the greater gifts that you can have if you shut the ego off and shut up. And you learn so much from them.
Yeah, it's very clear that you've learned a lot from this experience and you've grown a lot over the past several years working on this. So what are some of the lessons that you've taken from working in the library that you've brought to your team at Atomic and a project that you've been working on?
Well, number one, I was kind of going along, but I tend to wander off. So I stopped telling you that I screwed the project up several times when we built the library. I had to kind of do it on the side to start. Alight was a little involved, but not really involved. Imagine me doing something from Minnesota and Uganda without having totally Alight involved. Didn't go so well. So people like Igor is on here. And there was a design group, and I forgot their name, and somebody wrote it. These cats that I met at the Alight Gala, who came up to me and said, "Hey, if you need anything, we'll help you." And it was every shelter, unbelievable guys. They just came up to me and said, "If you need anything, we're architects. We live in Houston. We'd love to help you." So what happened was, Scott and Sam, I love these guys. So it was Sam met me at the thing. These guys would get online with us for nothing. They're getting nothing out of it. And there was another guy, Angela. I don't know who the other gentleman was. He was a builder here from Minnesota. And these people would all just get on and help us. And as we sort of got to this point where things kind of weren't going anywhere with the build that I had going on. I'd gotten the land. We were building the building. It was hilarious because Sam and Scott and Igor got on and they started looking at the plans and they're like, "Jim, if we build this, it's going to collapse." And I was like, "Great. I'm glad we got a really good plan and builder in place." And John joined us. And so Ambrose and these folks kind of swung in and helped me save the building. We rebuilt the pillars. We restructured some things. Igor was great and helped us with a better roof structure. And so all these people jumped in and helped. And I'm going to be really corny now and tell you that for a long time, my kids were Harry Potter fans, and so was Amy, and I wouldn't watch the movies or read anything. I didn't want anything to do with it. I was busy and I wanted them to have their thing. And now, of course, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan. I have my wizard hats and my wands and my cape, and I've read the books with the kids. And the thing that strikes me about Harry Potter is Harry has to learn through the series all the time that he can never go it alone. And he keeps thinking, I got to leave and do it on my own and face this evil. And all the other people go, "Harry, you're so stupid. We're always here." And the whole thing is that it's this group doing it. Well, I was Harry in this. Because all along I had to just keep trusting Ambrose and keep trusting Evershelter and keep trusting Igor and keep trusting John. And as I did that, they produced this unbelievable building that is gorgeous. And it's the biggest building in the settlement. And all these people come to it as this icon. And so I learned to the first thing, listen and shut up. And I have to remember what my talent is, which is I'm a very aggressive businessman who can bring the money and bring the idea. And then I need to get the hell out of the way and let all these other great people do their talents, which are usually the operations and the details. And so if my people are all on, which a lot of them are on, they're going to tell you that I've learned that over the last 20 years. I used to micromanage our companies probably pretty hard. And today I have great people that I really trust and that I believe in and that I let it go. Every now and then I jump back in, of course, because that has to happen. But I've been taught by Alight a lot of this human-centered design, a lot of this listening, besides my wife. She's taught me that too. Shut up and listen. You have great talents, but learn to blend them with others and learn to play on the team. And I think the refugees and the community members have taught me that in such a beautiful way, because I think it's more evident when I'm with them. And so maybe it's easier for me to do it there. And then all of a sudden it was easier for me to transport it to here.
And you couldn't have asked for a better partner than Ambrose, who has done such amazing work. at the refugee camp. So Ambrose, I know this project has been a different way of working for you and your team from a typical operational NGO lens. You're used to working with more fixed grants and large distant donors. What have you learned this time? What has Alight learned? And is there a broader shift happening in the way that you work as an organization?
No, again, it goes back to the trust, because trust you me, for anybody who has worked with probably structured grants would agree that there will be some high level of accountability, and probably there will be limited room to appreciate the mistake. And once in this work we are doing, there should be room for accepting that there should be room for error. And I just talked about how we started, how Jim trusted us. So I think it's been wonderful to work very closely with Jim, who understands the fact that there is room for error, but also when there is error, it is a responsibility of all stakeholders to be able to absorb that. And sometimes, yes, of course, there are accountabilities to be provided, but what I think we probably need most, either in agencies or in individuals, is high level of trust. High level of trust that there will be a wonderful job that will be done, even when we are probably contributing in a different way. And I like the approach Jim has learned that, yes, we probably gifted differently. If we could get resources from Jim and we get very many people, I'm speaking on behalf of so many people, have a wonderful team that is running all this in Nakivale. We had wonderful members who have been part of this journey. So if we could trust that they would do a good job, keep it in the hands of the community or the owners, I think it provides us the best we can get out of the grants and projects. So there is room for flexibility. There is room for us really not get bothered with so much kind of report. Jim would be the person who would give you thousands of $100 and they would say, please don't go overboard this, but make sure you do the right thing. And I don't imagine how one feels for that level of trust. And I'm sure Jim has not been disappointed by Alight for that.
Yeah, it's so crucial that these projects are locally led and that people have flexibility to really get it right, as you were saying. Jim, knowing all that and from all that you've learned, what's your vision going forward? How do you want to create impact next?
Well, first of all, we're doing it by telling the story. So I couldn't probably thank you more, Joe, because of what you know and how you know it, and the writing you do kind of lets you kind of see some of this. First of all, a couple questions came up that I wanted to jump on, if that's okay, and then we'll get back to that. I think Jane Stockton asked, is the library going to be its own nonprofit? That's a great question. We are working on it, because one thing we want to absolutely make sure of, if anything happens to Alight in Uganda, if anything happens to us, we are kind of building its own entity out of it. Scott, who's our marketing guru at Atomic, has just built a website specifically for the Nakivale Community Library Network, and it has its own. I made sure we had the URL from Uganda. It will be part of it. It will be the community's. It won't be ours. And all of that will be transferring, and we will figure out how we build a long-term fund to take care of everything. So long after we're here and gone, it will continue on. So yes, we're working on that. I think that's wildly important. I did hear, and I didn't get a chance to tell everybody, if anybody donates today to Alight, first of all, it'll go to the library. And secondly, I'm going to match anything that's given. And then I just got a text because one of you smart pantses already donated $10,000. So I can't, thank you enough. So whoever did that, you're already getting the message. I think mostly what we have to do is just keep growing those principles, grow the base of the program. We have so much programming from Alight, it's unbelievable. We have so much programming coming out of so a lot of people, we haven't talked about some of the details. We have 4 employees that are in our budget that Atomic pays for every year. That's at the library that's in Uganda that runs the library. So there are people there. It's crazy. When you get there, you're just sort of like, this is like an entity going on. That is, they're taking care of kids. They're having all these big kid programs. They have book reading. They have, there's all kinds of pictures. When I shut up, I'm going to share some pictures as my background that will show you some of these activities. I think that Ambrose is very quickly, depending on the settlement in Sudan, going to rodeo me there. And I'm sure that we're going to build a library there if we end up having a long-term settlement. Uganda is one of the most incredible countries I've ever been to. It is in the middle of a lot of war-torn Africa. Most of its neighbors have tribal warfare and they completely melt as governments often. And because it happened to Uganda in the 70s, Uganda is very teed up to help their neighbors all the time. So if anybody here doesn't know, Uganda takes in the most, well, I can't say that anymore because I don't know what Syria did to some things, but I believe Uganda has the most refugees coming in than almost any other country, which is crazy when you think that Uganda's really not capable of doing that, but they give so much because so many gave to them during the Idi Amin years when they had to flee. And now there's this heart in Uganda that is always accepting of refugees. And so there are many camps and many settlements, and they freely give of a lot of land. So we want to open up more libraries and more community centers like this that follow the same principles, get the same funding, get the same things, and build out and listen to the community in every settlement that Alight's in is my goal. I don't know why I would stop. You know, that should be what we do. And I don't want to think any differently. I probably need to be a little younger to do all that, but I think that we're going to try to replicate this so that every person that Alight serves will have this as a outlet to help them deal with what they have to deal with.
Yeah, this has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much, Ambrose and Jim, for sharing your stories. I've spoken to a few people at Alight before. I've interviewed them, and every time I have, I've been blown away by how passionate and how much integrity the team at Alight has. You're doing amazing work. And I think we're going to close by passing it to Nadia.
Thanks, Joe. All right, that was amazing. Thank you everybody for being here. We are going to put a QR code up on the screen, and that is going to be an easy mechanism for all of you to use if you are wanting to donate and help activate all of the incredible programming that is happening at the Nakivale Library. So this is it. This is your QR code. So how you use this is if you open up your camera on your phone, and then you just aim it right at the QR code, and you'll have a little banner that will pop up on the top. Just click on that and it'll take you directly to the link. So you don't even have to worry about typing in anything manually. And so you can feel free to join Jim who is going to match everything that's given today. Thank you to our anonymous donor who already so graciously took action and so generously. Joe, thank you for being here and for navigating this beautiful, robust conversation. Ambrose, thank you for being here and for leading this work in Nakivale and for teaching us that there is nothing for us without us. I want to leave you all with that. And Jim, for teaching us the power of listening locally and sustainability and making sure there is a love and a passion for whatever the work is that we are putting forward. I hope to see all of you next week. We have another Workshare next Thursday. We're going to bring you to Southeast Asia, and you're going to hear from Fifi and a couple of other people on our team to hear about how we are fighting malaria in Thailand and Myanmar. So please join us for that. It's going to be another beautiful, amazing, robust conversation. And with that, if everybody would like to jump off of mute, let's say goodbye to each other. Thank Ambrose, wish him well as he goes to Kassala, in Sudan to work with all of the amazing communities who have come from the Tigray region of Ethiopia.
Thank
Good luck,
you.
Ambrose.
Good luck, Ambrose.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck, Ambrose. Bye.
Good luck, Ambrose.
Good luck, Ambrose.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. We will miss you, Ambrose, but we will see you in a different country.
Be
Exactly.
with you.
Guys.
Thank you.
I'll be with
Hi,
you.
everyone. Thank you for being here.